Hello and welcome back to this course of videos on Node.js. Now in the previous video we served a simple index.html file to the client from our Node server. Now we need to adjust the code now because at the moment, regardless of the request URL that comes in from the client, we're running exactly the same code. So regardless of the URL, we are just calling and returning this index.html. And that needs to change because if we look into our public folder and we look at our index.html now it's been revised, the client is going to receive this index.html file. When it gets to this line of code here, it's going to reach out and make a second request to main.css, and our Node server needs to handle that. When it reaches this line of code here, it's going to reach out to our Node server again for the main.js file. We also have a contact.html file that the user can request via clicking a hyperlink, and this as well needs to be handled by our Node server. So let's make the necessary adjustments to our Node server to handle these different pages. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to separate this piece of these 3 lines of code here. This is what we're actually going to surround with the switch statement, because we want to run really this code regardless of the URL that is requested. However, we need to tweak it based on the URL that comes in. So you'll see what I mean in a second. The first thing I'm going to do is create a variable to capture the URL requested from the user. Obviously, the URL requested from the user drives the response that we give back to the client, and thus drives the code that we need to write. Another variable that I'm going to create here, my read stream is currently declared here. I'm going to change the scope of it and let my read stream. You'll see later why, but I need to change the scope here. So what we're going to do now is we're going to surround these 2 lines of code with our switch statement. So here's our switch statement. The switch statement is based on URL. We're going to surround our code here and just indent it there. Now, the first case is going to be either / or index.html. That is our first case. So if the user requests either / or / index.html, this is the code that's going to run. So I'm just going to tidy this up a bit and delete these comments. And I am going to, so what we're doing here is, as before, we're writing the head, we're giving it a 200 OK, text.html is going to be the header field, and then we are reading from index.html. One other thing we need to do here is we need to put a break statement here. Now what this means is we're going to have multiple cases in our switch statement depending what type of URL is submitted, and once we find the correct case, we want it to break out of the switch statement. We don't want it to continue going down and what JavaScript calls falling through the different cases and running every one. As soon as we find the case that the user is looking for, we want to break out. So one other thing that we want to do here is, so this code down here reads and writes our stream. So that's fine, assuming that we always find the file that the client is requesting. If the client requests a file that does not exist, what's called a 404 request, the file does not exist for foobar.html, for example, we wouldn't create a read stream. So when we come to run this code, it's going to error. So what I want to do instead is I want to surround this code in a function and then call the function from within this case. So that means that if the case isn't found, so if the file isn't found, this code will not be run. So let's go and action this code now. Let's surround this code in a function, indent, and then we're just going to call the function from inside our case. So now, we've taken care of index.html, let's take care of contact.html. I'm just going to copy and paste here. I'm going to change the URL requested to contact.html. This can stay the same, text.html, text/html, sorry, and we're just going to change the path to contact.html. That's it for the contact file. So let's move on to the style sheet. So again, I'm going to copy this in. The URL requested will change to css/main.css. The content type here does change. This isn't a text HTML file. This is actually a CSS file. So we're going to change the content type that we write in the header field. And we also, again, need to change the path. So it's not just public, the CSS file, let me go back to Windows Explorer, be easy to see. It's not just in the public folder, it's public CSS. That's where the CSS file resides. So we need to change this path accordingly, which will be public CSS main.css. So finally, our JavaScript file. So we're going to copy and paste. We're going to change again the URL requested, JS main.js. The content type is going to be changed to application/JavaScript. The path is going to be changed to, again, the JavaScript file is in a subfolder, so that's going to change to /js/main.js. So this really is our code completed. So what's going to happen now is, based on what URL is submitted, the Node app will act and return a different kind of file. And we have our server.this at the bottom here. So let's just test it out. I'm going to save this, and then I'm going to go to my git bash terminal. If I can open it, just bear with me 1 second. So here's my git bash terminal. I'm in the correct folder. So I'm just going to run node server. Server is now listening. And I am then going to my browser, and I'm going to go back to my localhost, sorry, if I can spell correctly, localhost 8080. Now this is going to request the index.html file, and it should also it should also call all those subsequent files that we looked at from the index.html file. So if I run this, we can see, and yes it does. You can see the CSS file is obviously engaged because of the coloring, and you can see this JavaScript code is running and dynamically changing what you're seeing in front of you here. So obviously the three different files, the CSS file, the JavaScript file, and the index.html file, have all been successfully pulled into the client from our Node server. And just a final thing to check, we're going to click on this hyperlink and reach out to our Node server to pull the contacts page, and yeah, hello world, welcome to my contacts page, and the JavaScript and CSS is still working. So I hope this gives you a good overview of how to do routing in Node.js, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.